1 Samuel 17, verse 20 through 26. You want to turn your Bibles over there to 1 Samuel 17, 20 through 26. This morning we talked about how to slay the giants in your life. The difficult things we go through in our lives, and organized things we can do, and important things for us to do, attitudes for us to have in order to overcome those things. We talked about the importance of courage and confidence and being consistent, what we communicate as far as our lives are concerned, and how David did all these things as far as fighting the giant. But this evening I want us to back up just a little bit in the story, and because there's some great lessons that precede this. And so we're kind of getting to the beginning at the end here. When we think about David and the things that happened with him, this is called evaluate your situation. David evaluated the situation as far as the battle was concerned. And there's much we can learn about the way that he evaluated the situation. Now, sometimes we haven't been taught by others how to evaluate a situation and how to look at things. And so because of that, we overreact or we don't act, we do the things we shouldn't do, and things of that nature. But David apparently had been taught, as God guided him, this is the way you evaluate and look at the situation you're going through. The better we become at evaluating the situation the way that God would have us to, the better we'll do His will in our lives. And so how we evaluate a situation, what we're dealing with, helps us to better operate as far as our lives are concerned. We can learn much about seeing how God's people allowed God to guide them through different situations. And so looking at the Old Testament, there's so many different situations they had to deal with. But as they allowed God to guide them through these situations, they did much better than they done otherwise. In some cases, it would have been fatal. It would have been terrible. The things would have happened to them. Walking by faith and not by sight always changes our perspective. Walking by faith, that's 2 Corinthians 5, verse 7. As we walk by faith and not by sight, it changes our perspective. Now, when we think about walking by faith, we're going, okay, trusting God, putting our faith in Him instead of what we see. We're so prone towards thinking we see things, and we do see some things, but we don't see the whole picture. But as we walk by faith, as David is doing here, as God is showing him and guiding him, we get a different perspective. And I'm convinced in my life and the lives of so many people I deal with on a daily basis, most of the problems we're having, difficulties we have, is because of perspective. That's the way you're seeing things. As we change our perspective, we see things different. We have a different outcome with situations. And a lot of situations we panic about and get so upset about are so different because we see them different, learn to see them different. We see them from God's point of view instead of from our point of view. Here in 1 Samuel 17, verse 23, we look at 1 Samuel 17, 23. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up a champion, the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, and out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. Now this is a really important verse in the Bible because he says, as David comes up and he talks to people, Goliath says the things he's going to say as far as taunting the children of Israel and the army there. But as David listens to this, your first blank on your page there, the Bible makes it clear that David heard, your blank is heard, it when Goliath stepped out and challenged the Israelites. David heard it. Now, a difficult thing that people have oftentimes, more times than not, is hearing the right way. How good are you at really hearing things? And I'm not talking about whether your ears are good or bad, but do you really hear what people are saying? So many times we're distracted. We have all kinds of filters. We don't hear other kinds of things, the things that are really going on. And because of that, we operate out of what we're thinking we're hearing, and we're not hearing the right things. But here we say, in this text, David heard what they were saying. He listened to them. Now, this is not on your notes. You might want to write this down. But there's 4 things involved in communication. 4 things involved in communication. Number 1 is talking. Talking. The weakest form of communication is talking. We're all great at talking. We talk. You see. The second thing is hearing. You see. Now, hearing is more difficult, and that's a greater form of communication than talking. So the better hearer you are, the better you get along, as far as concerned. Most preachers, most teachers, most people think there's only 2 things involved in communication. Those are the 2 weakest forms of communication, talking and listening. A deeper form than that is feeling. Feeling. David comes up. He hears what's being said. He's got some things to say. He's asking, what's going on? He asks questions. What's going on? He listens, but he doesn't just listen to the words. He feels. He feels the anger of Eliab, his brother. He feels the fear of the people around him. He's feeling what's going on. How good are you at feeling what other people got to say, you see? Talking, listening, feeling, and the deepest form of communication is understanding. Understanding, you see. When you really understand, because you've gone, wait a minute, what's going on? Now, when you evaluate a situation, the communication is so important. How well do we really understand what's really happening as far as situation is concerned? David did not run, your next blank there's run, for cover or get upset. Now notice, he comes in this situation not knowing what all's going to take place. Doesn't know that, but he comes in the situation and he doesn't run for cover. He's not scared like everybody else is. How often do we run for cover? This is too much. Get away. Maybe not physically, but emotionally. Just leave me out of it. I don't want any part of, instead of going, wait a minute, what's really going on in this deal? He not only doesn't run for cover, he doesn't get upset. Have you noticed how quickly some people get upset? I was raised around this all my life. People got upset about just certain words, certain things, certain subjects, and all of a sudden, they're completely out of connection with what's going on because they're upset about it. David's not upset. When you're dealing with a situation, keep your emotions under control. You have to. You can, you see. But getting upset messes us up. David was in tune with what was happening. Your next blank says tune. In tune with what's happening. Do you tune in with, you see, dealing with a situation, whether it's in the church or in our family, in the community, in the world. How in tune are we with what's really going on? Are we really wanting to see both sides of the situation best we can? Are we trying to get information? Or are we just going, no, wait a minute, no, wait a minute. Before we do, get in tune with it. Going, okay, let's see what's really happening here as far as that's concerned. So 1 Samuel 17, verse 24 says, when the Israelites saw Goliath, they all ran in great fear. Your blank there's great. Now, when they heard what Goliath had to say, they all ran. You ever been around a situation like that? Somebody says something or does something, and all of a sudden everybody just runs like rats, just takes off. That's what these guys are doing. It's Goliath. We've got to get out of here. You see, he said, wait a minute. Yeah, this is Goliath, but what's the situation? What's really taking place here as far as this is concerned? When fear, your next blank there's fear, is present, it's difficult to see the situation in its true perspective. When fear is present, it's difficult to see a situation in its true perspective. I may have told you the story, but years ago we were putting together a spook house. Way out in the country, an old rickety house, pretty close between Canton and Sealing. Didn't spook house. We go out there one evening, my youngest son, Stephen, and I, and we're going to put this casket in there in this upper room. So we got this casket fixed up, an old wooden casket fixed out there. We're up in the house, 2-story house, old rickety stairway going up in the place, Nobody's there but us. We're getting the casket all squared away with our dummy inside the carriage. You know how you do. Well, maybe y'all hadn't done spook houses, but it's exciting stuff. And all of a sudden, the lights go out in the house. I said, something's wrong. Stephen's right there. He's about 13 years old. I pulled him to me and I said, Stephen, right in his ear, no matter what happens tonight, do not turn loose my hand. Hold my hand. Okay, Dad. We're going downstairs. We've got to find out who else is in this house. So we crept down real slow down the stairs, out the front door. We could see a pickup sitting out there, but it was moonlight. We couldn't see what color it was or anything. I kept him over there, but the whole time I knew if I held his hand, I could at least control some kind of his fear because I could feel him shaking the whole time. Or maybe that was me shaking with him. I don't know. We walked out there, got in a tree row where it was in the shadows, walked over there towards our pickup, and then we saw a man standing on the back porch. And he had a flashlight in his hand. And I couldn't tell what was in the other hand. And I froze. Stephen froze. He turned the light on us. There we are in the light. We can't tell who it is, what's going on, if he's got a gun or not. All of a sudden he laughed, and I knew exactly who it was. It was the owner of the house. Everything was okay. We got in the pickup and we drove away. Well, I told you that to tell you this. Fear causes us to do strange things. We'll do things we wouldn't normally do. And if we're not used to fear and deal with fear, we automatically do the wrong thing, you see. Fear changes the situation. When fear is present, it's difficult to see situations in our true perspective. What's your fear? Now, the opposite of fear is faith. That's faith. David comes on the scene different from everybody else. Everybody else is scared, fearful. David's coming with faith. In our busy schedules, there are many times when we don't see what's really going on around us. We get all tied up in what's happening, but we don't really see what's going on around us as far as our lives are concerned. We get so focused on what's happening that we fail to hear, next blank there's hear, what others are saying. Now think about this. We focus on what's happening in the situation, and we fail to hear what other people are saying. Now I want to encourage you tonight, young and old, get better at your listening. Listen to what's going on around you. Listen to what people are saying. Listen to what people are feeling. Tune in to what's happening. Oftentimes it's totally different than we really think it is as far as life's concerned. We get upset when something happens to interrupt our plans. Your blank there's interrupt. We got our plans. We know what we want to do, but when something interrupts that, we get upset. Wait a minute. Remember this morning talking about David? He adapted the situation. Be willing and ready to adapt. Things are going to happen. Always happen. Every time you turn around, something's going to... But get used to it and understand things are going to interrupt our plans. In Isaiah 55, verse 8, the Bible says, my thoughts are not, your blank there's not, your thoughts. Neither are your ways my ways. God is saying to Isaiah, and through Isaiah, my thoughts aren't your thoughts. What you're thinking, most of the time, I promise you, God is thinking just about the opposite of our thoughts. We think it's bad, and God says it's good. We think it's good, God says, no, that's bad. Because there's a lot of good in bad, and oftentimes there's a lot of bad and good, you see. So learning to see it from His perspective, go, what is really going on here? Because our thoughts are not His thoughts. But the trick is, what David got was, learning to allow His thoughts to be our thoughts. See it from His point of view. And tonight, as we think about dealing with situations, learn to deal with situations the way that God would deal with them, the way that Jesus would deal with them, as far as life is concerned. Not hearing and seeing, next blank there's seeing, what's going on around us, causes us to miss out on opportunities God has to give us. You blank there's seeing and opportunities. Now, when we don't really see, we don't really understand what God's doing, then we miss out on opportunities. We're surrounded by opportunities all the time to teach other people, to help other people, to encourage other people, to sow hope with other people, to encourage other people's faith. The opportunities are around us all the time, you know. But when we don't really see and hear from God's point of view, we miss the opportunity. In Boy Scouts, our slogan is, be prepared. Be prepared. Any of y'all Boy Scouts? Been to Boy Scouts? You know the slogan, that's be prepared, you see. And I taught my Boy Scouts and my troops, when preparation meets opportunity, you have success. You might want to write that down. When you prepare, you meet opportunity, you have success. Most people, when they have opportunity, they're not prepared for it, you see. So what we do, we train Boy Scouts, be prepared for the opportunity. Because lots of opportunities around us, but we're not prepared for it. How often does somebody need you to talk to them about Jesus, or about their life, or about their health, or about your relationship? And because we're not prepared for it, we miss the opportunity. It's amazing how often people are looking for these things, and yet we're not prepared. David was prepared by his attitude and the things that were going on as far as his life was concerned. David is not looking for a fight. The easy thing to do is just act like you don't hear or see anything. David's not looking for a fight here. And the easy thing to do is just, I don't see anything. Nothing's going on. Yeah, there's something going on. Sometimes there's good things going on, but sometimes there's bad things going on. And sometimes your very presence, when bad things go on, make a difference. Your words, when bad things go on, make a difference, you see. You're being calm while everybody else is all upset, makes a difference, you see. You're saying a prayer, you see. All these things make a difference. But so many times we think, nobody cares what I got to say. Yes, they do. They care what you got to say. Other people around you are keying off of and thinking about what you've got to say. But here, David walks up, not looking for a fight, and seeing really what's going on as far as these things are concerned. A man after God's own heart is listening and looking for what God may bring next. A man after God's own heart. In 1 Samuel 13:14, and also in Acts 13:22, the Bible says David was a man after God's own heart. Would you like that said about you? I would love that said about me. Rod was a guy after God's own heart. You know, what made him a guy after God's own heart? What makes a woman after God's own heart? I think the things we're talking about right here. David learned to listen. But he didn't just listen to other people. He listened to God. David walked by faith and not by sight, you see. David wasn't controlled by his emotions, you see. All these things get us in trouble. Well, if you want to be a person after God's own heart, you're going to wait a minute. I got to draw this in. I got to make sure it's God's way instead of my way. The very best thing can be happiness to us, and we miss it so many times because it's painful. It's difficult. It's hard to go through, you see. And God said, no, wait a minute. Trust me. I'm taking care of these things. I'm guiding you in it. Christians must keep their ears and their eyes open at all times. Your word there is open. Keep your eyes and your ears open. Spiritually speaking, are your eyes open? Are you really seeing things or are you missing things? Are your ears open? Are you really hearing things? What's really going on around me? What's happening in my family? What's happening with my friends? What's happening with my brethren? What can I do to encourage people? Are we really paying attention to what's going on? 1 Samuel 17, verse 26 says David asked two questions in verse 26. The first question is, what will be done for the person who does this job? Your blank there's reward. What's the reward? David asked a good question here. What's the person that goes out there and takes this guy on, what's the reward for doing this thing? You know? And he's not trying to get just an amount of money. He's doing, well, what's the reward? There's always a payoff. There's always a payoff. What's the reward for this? The Christian needs to ask the question, what's the reward for living the Christian life? You know what the reward is. It's heaven. Our reward's heaven, you see. For every Christian that learns to listen, walk by faith, not by sight, learns to keep their emotions under control, do the things David did here, you see. The reward is, I got the good stuff for you, the good stuff for you. David says, what do you get for doing this? And then he says, who is this guy? Who is this man that comes out here and defies the army of God? You know, the risk. Your next blank, there's risk. Tell me about this guy, you know. Well, this is Goliath. Look at him. The guy is 9 feet tall. For those of you who don't know how tall that is, that's 1 foot under the basketball rim. Not the goal, but the rim. 1 foot. He could sit the basketball right in that thing right there. Jason played Goliath when I had vacation Bible school that time. I don't know how high they had it up there, Jason, but I imagine it's pretty high, you know, personally. But think about that. A man 9 foot tall. He carried around a spear with him. The head of that spear was 25 pounds. Imagine the kind of handle, that kind of shaft that thing had a 25-pound head on it. This guy's armor weighed approximately 200 pounds. All of his armor. Then he had an armor bearer that carried his shield for him and things of that nature. I mean, this guy's huge. David's saying, tell me about this guy. What's the deal with him? You see, information. Survey the situation. What are we really dealing with here as far as this person is concerned? What's the reward? Your next blank there, reward. Excuse me. The next blank there is worth. Is the reward worth the risk of fighting Goliath? Is it really worthwhile to fight this guy? Is this necessary to fight this guy? Of course, we know the answer. He realized it's worth it. It's worth it. Anytime you do what God wants you to do, like we talked about this morning, no matter what the odds are against you, it's always worth it. It's always worth it. Sometimes we weigh it out and go, no, wait a minute. I'm not doing that. It's not worth the risk. And God says, yes. You do my will. It'll always be worth the risk. I'll make it worth your while. We can learn a valuable lesson. Valuable lessons from David. We not only learn from what David does, blank there's does, but in what he doesn't do, what he does not do. We learn from what he does. We also learn things by what he doesn't do. Too many times we act, you blank there's act, before we have enough information to do the job correctly. Too many times we act upon something, do something, before we really have the information. What is really taking place here? What are we really talking about doing here? What's the job here to be done? David did not react. Did not react. Your blank there's react. Now he acted, he responded, but he didn't react. Now that's one of the most godly things that we do in living the Christian life is stop reacting. When the world, other people, our enemies hit us, it was one that we don't react, you see. We don't return evil for evil. We don't go back on. We go, no, wait a minute. I've got an action, but not a reaction. David acted and responded, but did not react. He responded. The next blank. Jesus never, the next blank there, never reacted. Can't show me one place in the Bible where Jesus had been hit by insults and reacted to somebody else. Now I've heard preachers say, well, Jesus reacted this way. No, he acted and he responded, but he never reacted, you see. A reaction means somebody hits you with something and you've got to land off over there, you see. It's amazing how often people react to other people. So they're going, wait a minute. Jesus never reacted. Stop reacting. Act and respond, but don't react. It's our decision. Too often Christians make fools out of themselves. You make there's fools. Many times Christians make fools out of themselves because we don't take the time to do what we're talking about tonight. Survey this situation. Listen. Pay attention to what's going on around you. Talk and listen, feel, and understand, you see. And stop reacting. We jump right in and start fighting. Next blank, there's fighting. The first thing. Ever been around a Christian like that? It's amazing. The things that are messed up and things get fouled up because somebody gets in the middle of the thing fighting instead of going, wait a minute. What's really the situation here? What can I do to improve the situation? Things of that nature. James 1:19 tells us to be quick to listen. The first blank there's listen. Slow to speak. And slow to become angry. Now, wise people are always quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Doesn't mean they don't become angry. It means they're slow to become angry. They got a long fuse before they get upset. Things of that nature. Matthew 10:16 says, be wise, your blank there's wise, as serpents, and harmless as doves. Wise and harmless. Think about that for a moment. Think about how wise a snake is, a serpent is. They work their way around slowly but surely, gradually, barely moving, waiting. Time to attack, wait to do things. See, one thing makes them so effective because they're wise. Jesus says here, God says here, be careful, be wise as serpents, but also be harmless as doves. Be wise serpents. The only other thing that an eagle is afraid of is a serpent, a snake. That's the only thing they're afraid of. And they're not afraid of them. They're just very cautious of them because they're going, wait a minute. So many times the snakes go so slow to get up into the nest and eat their eggs or kill their babies and things like that. He says, be wise as serpents. Be careful. Slow down. Think about what you're doing. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. Instead of jumping into a situation, we need to ask ourselves some questions. Find out, your next link there is find out what's going on. What's really going on? What's really the situation? David comes up, inquires, looks around, thinks about things, listens to things to find out really what's going on. Before we go off half-cocked, so to speak, what's really happening here? What's really taking place? Find out what's going on. David's questions were confident questions. Your blank there's confident questions. Not scared ones, but confident ones. Now, when you question things, use confidence. I need to know the answer to this. See, what's the deal? As far as concerned. It's amazing how often we talk to people and they'll say, well, you got any questions? And so many times we're afraid to even ask the questions, you see. Ask the questions. I remember several years ago being with a family in the hospital in Oklahoma City, and the father had heart surgery. And I was with the family, and we go in to see the surgeon like you do after the surgery was over, and talk to the surgeon, and the surgeon's talking to everybody, and the family and myself were there. And so it gets all through the whole procedure they went through and everything. He says, "You got any questions?" And I said, I waited. Nobody said anything. And finally I said, "I got a question." He said, "Okay, what's your question?" I said, "When they take that vein out of your leg down there, and do they just cut that off and leave it there to use for bypasses and things? Or what do they do with that vein in your leg?" He said, and who are you?" Just an old dumb preacher. I'm just here support. If you don't want to tell me, that's all right. I don't have to know. I didn't know there was questions you weren't supposed to ask. "No, I'll tell you the answer." And the family chimes in. "Yeah, we want to know too. What happens to that? Those veins are like rubber. You just pull them together and you sew them back together. And there's some pain involved. And at the same time, that's where we do the vein." Any other questions? And I said, "Well, that's all I got to know. I'm kind of interested to know, though, how you do that thing." Be confident and ask your questions. There's no stupid questions. Just ask the question. If the guy don't want to tell you the question, the answer, that's okay. But go, okay, what is this about? What's going on with this thing? Well, there's David doing the same thing with that competency as far as that's concerned. Not questioning to get out of something. He is questioning to know. Your next blank there's know. What he was getting into. He wasn't questioning what's happening to get out of it. He's questioning to know what he's getting into. What's really taking place here? What am I fixing to get involved in? We should concern ourselves with the what God wants us to do. Next blank there's do. And who He wants us to help. Our concerns need to be, what does God want us to do? And who's He wants to help? Now remember, I gave you 3 words this morning to remember. Be, do, and have. Remember those words. Now the do comes out of the be, you see. You be like Jesus. Be like Jesus. Make sure you're being like Jesus, you see. And the do will come out of that. God will always show you. This last week, a man said he's going through a lot of things as far as life. Right, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And he made the whole scenario, what's going on, the whole situation. I don't know what to do. And I said, "You're asking the wrong question." "Wrong question? Why?" I said, "Because don't worry about the do. You worry about the be." Be? I said, "Yeah. You be like Jesus, and the doing will come out of the being, you see. We're all worried about what to do. Don't worry about what to do. God will give you what to do. You worry about who to be, you see. You be like Jesus. Now here's David, and he's going, okay, this is what's going to take place, but I've got to do what God wants me to do. Here's by faith that I do these things. And that's where our confidence comes from. What does God want us to do? Who's He wants to help? God is about what? The next blank there's what and who more than why and how. God is about what and who. What do I need to do here? He wants us to know what it is. And He'll tell us more than the why and the how. Now, sometimes we don't understand the why and the how. He said, don't worry about that. Just do what I want you to do. You see, my professors in college used to say, you can't really understand the Bible till you do what the Bible says do. See, when we obey it, it makes sense. Otherwise, we go, well, I'm not trying that. That doesn't make sense. You do it. You do what it says. And it always makes sense. But it doesn't make sense as long as we just go, well, I want to figure it out before I do anything. God says, no, do what I tell you to do, and it'll work out fine. Work out as far as your life is concerned. We think about all these things that are happening as far as our lives are concerned, and many times we get confused and we get upset, we get bothered because we're so busy as far as our lives are concerned. We need to trust God for the why and the how and be busy. Next blank there's busy with what to do, with what and who. Be busy. Let Him take care of the why and the how. Why are we doing this and how are we doing this? And be busy with what you want us to do. Do you really hear what others are saying? And we talked about hearing. We need to examine ourselves. We need to ask ourselves a question often. Now we think we're hearing, but we're not really hearing. My brother called me up the other day and he said, Rod, I want to tell you about this guy that he's having trouble with his wife. And he decided his wife was losing her hearing. And so he said, Doc, what can I do to find out about this without was having a confrontation with my wife. And the doctor said, well, you get over there across the room and you ask your wife a question. And if she doesn't answer, you go a step or two closer to her and you ask the question again. Closer to her, you ask, until she answers. He said, okay. So that night, he's in the room with his wife, and he says, what are we having for supper? No answer. He got closer and said, what are we having for supper? No answer. Third time, he gets closer, he says, what are we having for supper? She said, for the third time, we're having spaghetti. Well, we think we're hearing, but a lot of times we're not hearing. Now think about it, life. How often do you think, I already know? No, you don't know. Come on. What's really being said here? What's God saying? What's really taking place as far as our situation is concerned on things? Do we hear what's going on around us? Or do we conveniently ignore, your blank there's ignore, those things that may require us to make a choice? Do we really hear what's going on, or do we conveniently ignore the things around us make a choice? We don't make a choice about these things, we make a decision about them, so we ignore them. Many times, when we really hear something, it calls us to make a choice. When you really hear something, it calls us to make a choice. What are you going to do? What are you going to decide about? Now, sometimes we'll do almost anything to keep making a choice. No, wait a minute. There's always choices. And sometimes we choose by not choosing. He says, here's the thing. You make the choice. How do we see people who need our help? You blank, there's help. How do you see people that need your help? You see, are we looking for people who need our help? There's always somebody around that needs your help. They need you to teach them something, they need you to show us something, they need you to help out. It's amazing how many people are around us. But sometimes we just tune that out. I don't want to help anybody. And so we just pretend like they're not even there. Did Jesus pretend like people weren't there? Constantly helping people. Who is it that needs our help? Do we see them as Jesus saw the crowd? Your next blank, there's Jesus. Matthew 14:14 says, when Jesus landed and saw a large crowd, he had compassion, your blank's compassion, on them and healed their sick. As he come into the shore, he's watching the people. He has compassion on them. He knows they need his help. They need taken care of, the sick do, and things of that nature. Do we go out of our way to find people in need? Are you looking for people in need? I promise you, if you'll look, if you'll pray, ask God, lead me to people that need me today. Help me know who the people are. Now, sometimes these people are not going to scream out at you. They're not going to holler at you. They're not even going to tell you. You see, they want you to ask them, can I help you? Is there something in your life? See, I've learned if you treat everybody that you come in contact with like they're hurting, you'll be good to people most of the time, the right way, you see. Because most people around you and me are hurting, one way or another. But some way we have a tendency to neglect that and not allow that. Do we have compassion on them? Next blank, there's compassion. Are we compassionate people? On a scale of 1 to 10, how compassionate are you? Are you a 1? You go, I don't show much compassion. Or are you a 10? I show lots of compassion. Now, where are you? 5. How much compassion are we showing? See, because a lot of what we do depends on, that's what we talked about this morning, how we view people. Older Christians need to teach younger Christians all these things. Now, one thing we could do, and a great thing we could do, is teach, those of us who are older, teach younger people about these things. To evaluate, your next blank there is evaluate, every situation they find themselves in before they act or react. Evaluate the situation. What's really going on here? Did you know when we teach Boy Scouts how to survive, one of the things we teach them is most people they find in the desert, in the woods, in some city, someplace, within 10 feet of them is the thing that would have cost them to live. They could have made it. They could have made a fire. They could get something to eat, something to drink, something to signal with, within 10 feet, you see. Well, the point is, most people don't die and fail because there's all these things, not things around them. There's things around you all the time. But their attitude is, It's not out there. They give up, you see. If you're the person that says, right over here is what you need, oftentimes you don't have to provide it. You can just show them where it's at. You go, right here it is, you see. So many people are giving up today. And a lot of these people are taking their lives because they give up. And they don't realize within 10 feet of them is the very thing that would have caused them to succeed. It's amazing. But we need to be people that are looking for people that are struggling and having difficult times. Evaluate the situation. First, learn to watch. Next blank there's watch and listen. We need to teach our young people. Watch and listen. What's really going on here with this situation? To see what's really going on with others. The second thing they need to learn is to ask questions. Next blank there's questions. So what to ask? Also what to ask. What questions do you ask in this situation? What's going on? Don't question, not a question of doubt. Doubt. Forget the doubt. There's all kinds of doubts out there. This might not happen, this might happen. No, wait a minute. You need to question, what is it that's real here? You know, I've found in my life, most people around you are anxious to teach you and show you things if you're looking for the answer, you see. A lot of people won't tell you things unless you're looking for the answer, you see. We need to teach our young people, look for the answer. God always has the answer. But if you don't seek, you won't what? You won't find, you see. It's not there. Seekers find when we do it. Questions, together information. Information blanks there. To help know the situation. What's really taking place? What information can we get? The more information you get, the better off you're going to be. What and who questions, not how and why questions. So many children ask why. And parents aren't wise enough, or grandparents, or whoever's taking care of them, they go, wait a minute, you're asking the wrong question. Don't ask why. You ask what and who. What do I need to do? Who do I need to help? So many times we get drawn up in foolish questions until we don't even answer the real good questions. What do I need to do? Who do I need to help? Maybe you need to ask them, who do you need to help? Stop asking why. Start asking who and what questions. The third thing we need to teach our young people is to be aware of their surroundings. Be aware of your surroundings. Look around. Who's here? Who's not here? What needs to be done? What would God have me do? What would Jesus do? If he was 12 years old, left alone in a temple for 3 or 4 days by himself, but that's exactly what happened to him. Luke tells us that. What would he do? How well would he survive? You see, all these things we're talking about tonight are ways to survive. Not just survive physically, but ways to survive spiritually. But so many times, we're not surviving. And if we're not surviving, we can't help someone else survive. My favorite definition of an adult is a person, a true, real adult, authentic, real adult is somebody who can take care of themselves in every way. Physically, financially, socially, spiritually, every way they can take care of themselves the way they need to. And one other person. One other person. If you're an adult here tonight, you know how to take care of yourself, you see. There's a lot of people in our society, though, that think they're adults are not adults at all. All you got to ask them is things like, who's paying your car insurance? Well, my dad is. Well, that's not an adult. See, when you're paying for everything as far as your life's concerned, you're an adult, you see, taking care of ourselves in every way. When David walked up to the situation, he knew how to take care of himself, but he also knew who was taking care of him. He was walking by faith and not by sight. As we close tonight, as we think about the invitation tonight, I want to encourage you to think about your situation, your spiritual situation. Is your heart right with God? That's the thing that counts today. If your heart is right with God, you're trusting Him to guide you in every way. You're looking to Him to guide you. You're asking mature questions like, what do I need to do to be saved? What do I need to do to be right? What do I need to do to make things right, you see? Wise people ask wise questions, and they get the answer. But God also says, the man who does not love the truth will be given a strong delusion, so he'll believe a lie, you see. If we don't love the truth. Do you love the truth enough tonight to obey it, to obey the gospel, become a Christian, rededicate your life, or have this congregation pray for you if you have a need? Once you come together, we stand and sing.